Blake, if I gave you 6 hours in a car, what would you do with it?
I would talk about my main girl with my main girl in my getaway car.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who plans to rank my top 15 Taylor Swift songs of all time tonight as I drive with my sister and wife down to the best beach in America. And I'm here with my co-host who went to the beach last week but didn't even put his toes in the sand. Basically a criminal defendant, Toby Walters.
I love the irony of the timing of this. Now, going back to our little intro quip, you said you would talk about your main girl with your main girl in your getaway car, and then you said you're going to be with your sister and your wife in the car. So which one is your main girl, or are they both your main girl?
My main girl is Taylor Swift.
So then your sister or your wife is the other main girl?
Taylor Swift is both of my main girls. Are you kidding me?
It's a good thing your wife doesn't listen to this podcast, right?
Yeah, unless when she happens to be working from home the day I'm prepping it, to which I've gotten a lot of eye rolls.
Uh-huh. I'm not surprised. So, Blake, how many hours from now you're hopping in a car and you're driving to the beach?
As soon as we finish shooting the early service video by 5 p.m.-ish today, I'll be rocketing home, and I'll probably get to Fort Walton at like 2 a.m., but it'll be great.
And so you're driving to the beach with your sister and your wife, and you're going to rank your top 15 Taylor Swift songs. This is not an exaggeration. This is literally what my teenage daughter wants to do this summer. She wants to go to the beach in Florida with her best friend and rank their top Taylor Swift songs.
Her and her best friend can jump in the car. I mean, I got to go through Franklin to come down from Nashville.
So you're basically a teenage girl is what we've discovered.
Dude, you think I'm not cool enough to be a teenage girl? I wish I was cool enough to be a teenage girl.
And maybe this is part of the reason that you are perhaps never going to have children because you are already a child?
Yes. Also, I would love to point out that both you and I could not be in Florida at the same time. You notice that? Like, I went to Florida, then you went to Florida, then I go to Florida, because Florida cannot have that many Florida men at the same time.
Or do you think it's me saying I need to get away from Blake? I need to make sure I'm in the state of Florida when he's not in that state, because that's too close.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Even when we went to Orlando for Exponential, I got there a couple days early, and you didn't join us.
That's true. So you're going to Fort Walton Beach, and how do you feel about this very blah beach?
It's the best beach in America.
Said in true redneck fashion.
Here's the deal about Fort Walton Beach. Let me tell you now right here. You got a military base on this beach, so they only let you have a condo 7 feet or 7 stories tall. You know what that means, Toby, with there's only 7 stories?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
That means that there's less people, less idiots you had to deal with like yourself. It's a much better beach. Less idiots, more fun. Fort Walton.
The things that the declarative statements you have made in your life, this is definitely up there. Like when you said Jet's Pizza is the best Chicago deep dish in the world, and it's not even Chicago deep dish pizza.
Yeah, we went to Chicago for Philo, and I can confirm it is better. I did a second sampling of the Chicago deep dish pizzas.
Now, you are true that so last week I was down in Miami, and my wife and I were escaping our teenage children who were ranking their Taylor Swift songs. Oh, the irony of this, Blake. And yes, it's true that we stayed 1 block from the beach, but we did not touch the sand.
Man, I want to make fun of you, but I'm just too baffled to do it. Like, I genuinely want to know, why the heck did you not go to the beach?
So it's hot in Florida, as you might imagine. It was 90 degrees plus every single day. Out on the beach, you have no shade.
Bring a tent.
Bring a tent? We flew down there. We're on vacation. You want us to bring a tent to Miami?
I'm bringing a tent.
I'm staying in a hotel, so I don't need a tent.
You do on the beach.
And so to us, we grew up in San Diego. Like, the beach was a normal thing for us. Now we only go a few times a year. That's the irony oftentimes of living near the coast. You don't actually go to the beach nearly as much as people think. They're like, oh, you grew up near the beach. You must have been there all the time.
Toby wasting opportunities. What else is new?
I know. So especially like when we hired our brand director, that was a wasted opportunity.
Oh, man.
And, the thing about my wife and I is we want to be near the beach, but not on the beach. We want to be like next to the pool, in the shade, reading our books. and no sand all up in crevices and stuff.
I can relate to that. Like, I want to work at Church Gear, but not be next to Toby. So
Because
I get
all
it.
that sand gets up in all your crevices, Blake.
Toby, your sand.
How many days is it going to take you once you get back from Fort Walton Beach to get all that sand out of your crevices, Blake?
Okay, you want to be? I'll be real.
Yeah.
Because you've gotten a couple videos from me on the beach when I'm having a good time. When I really am at my peak, I will lay where the surf hits the sand, and I will just roll around in the water. So
It's very much like, seals or walruses coming out of the sea to just, I don't know.
This is the
bathe in
truest.
sun.
That's the truest thing you've
Yeah.
ever said about me.
Yeah.
And another true statement is sitting here with us today is the production manager at Longhollow Church, a man who has 2 email addresses, and one of them's a burner email, Timmy Wagoner. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Tim, how do you feel about the beach?
I grew up in Florida, and I'm not a beach person, but my family
irony of
is,
that.
so we go.
Where'd you grow up in Florida?
I grew up in Orlando.
Okay, so which direction would your family head when it was beach time?
Typically, we would go to the East Coast, so not the Gulf side, but
Yeah.
like New Smyrna and Daytona Beach and stuff like that.
Did you just say New Smyrna?
New Smyrna Beach, yeah.
That's Blake. You live in Old Smyrna.
You know Smyrna's in the Bible, right, Toby?
What is Smyrna in the
It's-
Bible?
It's one of the 13 towns or something that gets a letter in Revelations. So every time you've talked bad about Smyrna, God is going to smite you.
I was hoping it was like Sodom and Gomorrah and Smyrna.
That would be more applicable, but
And Tobiah is in the Bible. Tobias is not in the Bible, but Tobiah. Yeah, so it's very close.
so you're not going to heaven. You got real close.
So Tim, if you're going on a family vacation, if you're in charge of voting, where are you taking the family?
I'm taking them to the mountains, Pisgah, maybe Colorado, something like that.
Okay. How do you feel about lake
Yeah.
beaches?
Those are gross.
Yes and amen. Also, notice Toby didn't say if you're voting. He said if you're in charge of voting, meaning he thinks that you will rig the votes.
No, I just know as a dad of, family with wife and kids, like we don't necessarily make the rules. We pay for the
Yeah.
rules, but we don't make them.
We've done a few mountain trips, and I've since convinced my wife that, hey, the mountains aren't bad to visit. We can, alternate from year to year. So
Tim, do you go by Tim or Timmy? What do you prefer?
everyone calls me Timmy, but I introduce myself as Tim. I don't have a preference, honestly.
So Timothy it is.
I wanted him to say what he preferred
That's
because I
fine.
was going to say the opposite.
Okay. Blake,
I mean, my
feel like-
mom calls me Timothy, so
Okay. Mom it is. Blake, I've been clearly trying to get information out of him to help skew the 5 truths and a lie.
Oh.
Yeah, you didn't know I was doing that, but let's see if I've given myself any advantage now.
All right, Big T. Let's play some 5 truths and a lie. My goal is to give him as many nicknames as we can throughout
Yes.
this. Number 1, I have been to 48 states and 8 different countries. This is on almost all of these.
Yeah, like all these guys tour, and so it seems like an easy thing. Because most people haven't been to 48 states, but people that tour, like, yeah.
I won't go to
get there in a
48
couple
states
years.
over the course of my life.
Yeah.
Number 2, I have done shows with Trump and George W. Bush. Now, I think what he's implying is he did audio, but when I hear I've done shows, I'm imagining him rocking out on stage with Trump and George Bush, like with a guitar.
Yep.
Number 3, my first time on a digital console, I deleted an artist's file after their sound check.
Oh, that
That has to be the lie. He'd be dead by now.
would be a painful introduction to digital consoles, but yeah, those things happen.
Number 4, I did a show where I set up a PA for 1 million people.
Dang. Like, there's only been a few instances, like, in history with shows with 1 million people.
Toby, I was a millisecond away from saying where I set up a paw for 1 million people.
Oh, my God.
I was like, what is a paw? Then I was like, it's a PA.
It's something that you look at that you can see at NAB, Blake.
Oh my gosh.
You can go to NAB and you can see a paw. And then you can go to NAMM.
Some other arrangements of those letters I'd like to do. Number 5, Carmen wanted to adopt me. Should I be generic and say artist? I don't get it.
Do you know who Carmen is, Blake?
I know it's a song that Lana Del Rey sings about.
Great. Well, this gives me a slight advantage now. Okay, keep going.
6, and finally, I've been married for 20 years. I have 2 daughters and a little dog that likes to lick the inside of my ear. What the freaking crap. Tim, you were made for this podcast.
Yes.
Big T, I love it.
Okay, Blake, do you have a leaning?
You know me, dude. I'm always gonna go with the numbers.
Okay.
Because you can just lie once on
Yep.
there. So I'm gonna say he's not been to 48 states and 8 different countries.
I'm going to say that he has not done shows with Trump and George W.
That
Bush.
was my other one that
I'm
I
going to
thought
say
about.
like maybe one of them, but not both of them. So, all right, Timothy.
All right.
Yeah. So the lie is I haven't been married for 20 years. I've only been married for 10.
Dang it. I should have known that. He looks too young because I've been married for 20 years and I am ancient, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, we call you Grandpa Toby for
Yes.
a reason.
Yes.
All right, Wags, tell us about your shows with Trump and George W. Bush.
Sure. So notice I didn't say president. I used to work with a lighting guy named George W. Bush. He would always wear a tank top, short shorts, and a fanny pack. Smoke 2 packs a day. Super grouchy.
We're
but
still waiting
he's a great guy to work
for
with.
you to just make sure that it's not the president, because this could still have
Yeah,
been former President George W. Bush.
He was not the president, thankfully. The Trump show, I got asked to do a load in and a load out with a company that I used to work for. They didn't tell me for who. So I said, it was local. I said, sure, I'll do it. Went down there, did the load in. Still didn't know what it was for. Noticed there was not a lot of stage. There was no monitor console. It's a talking head at this point, but I don't know who. Go home that night. I get a call from the front of house guy saying that he has an emergency with the artist that he normally tours with, and he couldn't do it. And so I had to run front of house. And then that's when I find out, oh, by the way, it's Trump, and he had just been elected. It was like his, I don't know, celebratory tour, I guess. So yeah.
Dang. Did you, what was the security like?
I was about to
when you
say,
had to run that?
didn't you need to get security clearance? We've had people
I
kinda get
did.
those.
Yeah, I did. But basically, it was a little different because it wasn't a White House event. It was a Trump event, which all the White House people were still there, but they were like, this is not our normal event. Okay. I don't know what the difference is, but basically once he was in the building, I was not allowed to leave front of house. And then there was like a tech guy on this, like on the side of the stage, but he also, once he was in the building, he's like, you can't touch the stage. If you move, I'm going to tackle you.
So did you get a fancy poop bucket then to like have with you in front of house?
No, I mean, he wasn't there that long, in and out kind of thing. So it wasn't a big deal.
Now, we are an apolitical podcast, but I'm just imagining, if you are a non-supporter of Trump, like at front of house, like the things you could just be doing with the mute button to just be a pain in the butt. And then, I mean, I don't think they can send you to jail for, muting President Trump. I don't know.
That's actually a
Probably
really
not.
fascinating
Probably
thought.
not.
Well,
Yeah.
but I bet they could tackle you though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the guy next to me that was watching me and making sure I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing would just reach over and undo whatever I did.
Yeah.
But
So tell us about the show for 1 million people.
so it was my first ever show working with a company in Nashville. It was actually really my first show out of school. It was this massive show on the mall in DC. We loaded in for 4 days in the rain in November.
Oh,
It was literally the worst gig I've ever done.
That's how I describe
It
the
was
show.
like
it's the only gig you've ever done, Blake.
it was like a dual stage. So we had 2 monitor consoles like in the middle and 2 stages on the side, like off to the side or each side, big PA, and then like 10 delay towers. It was kind of this big charismatic event. It was called America for Jesus. And so they were praying for 1 million people. Not 1 million people showed up. We might have broke 100,000 at the biggest part of the day. Again, it was like the weather was terrible. It was a rough show. Middle of the show, when the generator died, powering the majority of the audio system because they ran out of fuel. It was fun.
That is brutal. Okay, so tell us about getting legally adopted by Carmen.
Can you explain to Blake? I assume you're talking about the Christian artist Carmen.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
give Blake a little context here because Blake doesn't know.
Oh, geez. How do I sum him up? He's
great
like, imagine this really tan Italian man that likes boxing and some kind of cheesy 80s music.
Oh, so like Dan, our finance guy.
Nothing like Dan, our finance guy.
So just basically, he was the first artist I ever toured with. The company that I was working for pretty much grew because of Carmen. Like as Carmen's career took off, so did this company. And this was kind of on probably the tail end of his career, honestly. And so I got thrown out there to run monitors and tracks. The first week was not good because it was my first tour. I really didn't know what I was doing and got called to the back of the bus in the first show. Carmen sat me down and basically told me I suck and I need to do better. And I took that to heart, and I did. And I toured with him for about 5 years. And in that time, he contacted my boss and joked me like, "Hey, can I just adopt this guy? He's great." So.
Well, that's a fun segue to get you to, give us a little bit of your. Oh wait, Blake's giving me the look of he wanted to ask another question. Okay, Blake.
You said on your first time on a digital console, you deleted an artist file after their sound check. Is that a juicy story?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think funny enough, all these stories are probably within the same 2-year period. But was doing a big Christian festival up in New York. I was on a PM5D. I think it was a PM5D, but anyways, we had just got done. I was running monitors. The front of house guy kind of helps the artist get going on stage, goes out, does his thing at front of house, comes back, and he's like, stored the file. He's like, "You're not going to delete it, right?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm not going to delete it. We're good." We get to the next band, and I realize I stored over his file.
Oh.
And so, yeah. So I had to go find his tour bus, his green room, let him know. He kind of stared at me for a second, and he said, "Okay, I'll come up, first song, I'll help you get going. Make sure your front of house guy can mix the first song. We'll get it going." And that was it. And I actually ran into him. He's still out there mixing for CCM artists, and I ran into him recently, and I've actually seen him several times since, but he had forgotten about that. And I reminded him the story, and he's like, "Oh, that was you." I'm like, yeah, that was me.
I've been in counseling for the last 10 years over that.
Are you sure he forgave you? I was thinking that long scar on your neck was from your last interaction with him, but
no, that's probably from a recent mountain bike accident. But anyways.
So Tim, give us just a quick snapshot of your background in production. How'd you get to your start? And then what is it always your dream to lead a production team at a large, formerly Baptist, currently Baptist, we don't talk about a church.
And be on this podcast.
Yeah. This is the pinnacle achievement of your career.
So I'm a preacher's kid. My dad's a worship leader. When I was 8 or 9, his front of house guy, sound guy, called in sick. And I was at the church with him, and he just sat me down behind this massive old PV console and was like, "Hey, when I walk up to the podium, hit this button. When the pastor walks up, hit this button. And if it feeds back, pull this down." And that was my introduction. So I kind of got involved in church that way. I think, by high school, I knew that this is what I wanted to do for a living. I had lots of friends that were becoming, I'm going to be a pastor, a missionary. And there might have been some pressure there, but I definitely felt like at some point in time I was going to be in a church that was, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say it was my calling, but yeah, kind of I wanted to use my talents to help spread the gospel. And, so I ended up going to Full Sail just because it was about 2 miles down the road. I don't tell people I go to Full Sail, but I did. Graduated, moved to Nashville. Within 2 weeks of moving to Nashville, I was working at a company here and worked there for 7 years doing everything, church shows, stadiums, arenas, you name it, installs. I actually ended up doing some installs at Longhollow through that and through a show where I actually worked with Longhollow Worship. I got to know a lot of the production guys here, started attending, volunteering, contracting. Church was growing and they were opening campuses, and they decided to hire someone that would basically oversee all the production at campuses, at all the campuses and stuff, and help it open new ones. And so I took that job. I was ready to get off the road. I was very single at that point.
What is very single?
Meaning if I was still going down that path, I had no hope.
Okay.
Anyway, so I decided to get off the road, come work for the church. A lot of stuff happened at Longhollow in the 12 years I've been here. Our senior pastor got cancer, passed away. We had an interim pastor for a year. Then we brought Robbie, our current senior pastor, on. He likes to joke that he grew the church from 6,000 to 4,000 when he first came. I think there was a learning curve with him, but we also had campuses shut down. Got down to where we were just 2 campuses, and so at that point, I became just the audio engineer. I moved to the Henderson campus, our main campus. Started mixing broadcast a lot, which was actually great because I hadn't had much experience in broadcast, so I had an opportunity to learn a lot in that space. Eventually I moved to the lead audio engineer role, as mixing front of house. And then a year ago, our video director, who was our production manager, quit, went full freelance. And at the same time, our lighting director quit, and a few months later, another production guy on the team quit. So lots of fun things happening all at once. But as soon as we found out that the video director, our production manager, was moving on, our creative director came to me and said, "Hey, I want you in this position." He's like, "I know with you, we can do great things." And, of course I said yes. And so, it's been a crazy year though.
So you've fairly recently, as far as your scope of life in production space, very recently been sort of thrust into this production director role at Longhollow. How has sort of the work changed in this new leadership role, and what new skills have you had to kind of scramble to learn as now you're leading a team?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tim is
so a lot of my role. Yeah, sorry, that was a long pause. I had to think for that one. A lot of my role has stayed the same. Like I still kind of do the lead audio engineer thing. I still mix front of house. I'm still kind of overall audio, but I have a lot more added responsibility, just kind of overseeing the team, scheduling, dealing with events and stuff like that. I think, the audio world has become very second nature to me. Things that, are just a kind of common sense. Dealing with people is a very different thing. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone requires, I may communicate something, but I might have to communicate it differently for one person than the other. I think that's something I'm learning. I'm sure you have similar experience with Blake.
100%. It's what is it, like whale sounds that I have to communicate to you with?
No, that's how Jonah communicates with me here at Church Gear.
But yeah, I think so. A lot of that. I mean, I think I've also have to learn like when to say no and when not to say no.
Yeah.
I think I wanted coming in. I wanted to say yes to a lot because some of this stuff is stuff that I really enjoy doing. It may mean extra work, but I enjoy it. But over time, as I said yes to more things than I probably should have, I've seen how my team reacts, the weight it puts on them, and I've learned that better now. I'm still learning what I can say no to and what I can't say no to. I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn.
Yeah, and I've noticed for myself, like even leading a company now, there's a lot of things that I enjoy doing that I used to do that I can't necessarily do anymore because that's not where my time or energy is needed. Do you struggle with that on a weekly basis where you're like, man, I'd really love to be in the broadcast suite mixing audio, but like I got to be out here calling shots, or like I got to jump in here because we're down a man over here. Like, is that a sacrifice every week?
Yeah, yes and no. I think it was in the beginning, but what I have learned is to delegate more. some of the things, not necessarily the things I don't want to do, but maybe some of the stuff that takes a little bit more time so that I can still focus on the things that I need to, and also the things that I want to, and the things that kind of give me life and help me to continue enjoying my job. So I've delegated several things to some of the other guys on the team to just kind of spread the workload. And there's a few guys on the team that have seen me at my limit and recognize it and will stop me and say, hey, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And that's been awesome.
So for you guys, like, you are in Nashville. We all know that Nashville's a unique place where there is a ton of industry and touring and lots of things happening all the time. Like, how do you guys recruit for your team? You said one of your main guys left to go full-time freelance, which is often an option in Nashville. Are you guys trying to staff up? Are you a lot of volunteer led, or do you sort of like lean into the industry side and say, we hire a lot of contractors?
It's probably a mixture of both. I think we probably lean towards more the staff side. So I'm actually working on hiring a new video director right now. I've had a couple interviews. I have another one today. I was able to hire our lighting director relatively quickly. We had an intern. We actually have pulled from a lot of internships. We have 2 to 3 summer interns every year, and occasionally a spring and fall intern. And so that's been a great pool. In fact, three of our current production staff are former interns. They all didn't they weren't initially, they didn't go straight from internship to job. Some of them went internship to kind of work out I think someone worked for integrators and things like that. But eventually they all ended up back here. We are contracting video directors, and we will contract as needed. I think we're probably headed down a path of more volunteers. Like, everything is getting more expensive. The conversations I'm having right now, like, we're trying to hire this video director, and I'm like, I don't know how. I should be probably careful how I say this. Yeah. I don't know how that person is going to be able to afford housing in Sumner County. And I could be wrong,
No, Tim, you're not wrong.
It won't be easy.
They just put out a report this week. My best friend lives up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is the most affordable place to live in the country.
That's
literally,
why Sweetwater is thriving.
Literally. And he forwarded me a thing that said Nashville housing is the top market that is like feeling the most pain in that regard. So I feel you in that sense.
It's all those Californians moving here.
Freaking California.
Yeah, we did hire a Californian on the team as well. So
Tim, stop it. We have to hold together as Tennesseans. I'm trying to combat the 20 plus that are here at Church Gear, these Californians.
So Tim,
funny. We still love them though.
We could have churches listening in Fort Wayne, and they're feeling the pinch of trying to pay a fair wage. But you guys, and us too, we're right in the heart of Music City, where not only is housing prices going crazy, but like, there's a lot of jobs here for people in the industry. So, what are the conversations like? Are you in the conversations with leadership where you're saying, hey guys, we need to sort of face the reality here, and we've got to find a way to pay a fair wage if we want to get someone qualified in this role?
Yeah. I'm not in the conversations. I have definitely sparked the conversations. In fact, some of your, the pay series podcast that you guys did, I definitely shared that with my boss. And he listened through several of them. It's an ongoing conversation. It's one of those things that's probably going to take a long time to like put into play, and it's going to be slow. Which, we're a big church, and it's a big ship, and it takes a lot to steer it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we're slowly preparing ourselves for, that we've kind of been thinking about for several years, is this doer to developer mentality. So rather than just hiring staff to continue to do all the work, we're going to develop our volunteers to help staff, so that maybe we don't have to have a 200 person staff to run this church. Maybe we can do it with 100 people or 75 people.
Yeah.
That's a very long-term thing. Obviously people are like, well, am I going to get fired? No, that's not the plan. But that's the direction we're headed in.
Yeah. Have you, in your role, been able to develop any sort of like onboarding or training systems for specifically for production people. So if, a volunteer wants to get involved in audio or video, whatever it is, that they have some, you guys have some resources to start them on the path towards learning that stuff.
Actually, not at all.
Okay.
It is something we're working on, something we've been like, there's a lot of things changing at Longhollow right now. There have been a series of meetings that I actually haven't been a part of because it's a 2-hour meeting on a Thursday afternoon, and I can't do that. Where a lot of staff have gotten together to talk through, like, how do we onboard? How do we get people involved? Just as a church, not specifically production.
Yeah.
And we are also going through that same conversation on a much smaller scale. I think part of what we're dealing with now is just lack of margin because we've been short-staffed. Training volunteers is not easy because you want to do it one-on-one. You want to spend time with them. You want to get to know them. And it's just been hard when we don't have the time. But a lot of the guys that come to us because we're Nashville have experience, which has been great. Sometimes if I can judge their experience well enough, I'll throw them in there and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That's definitely not how we want to do it. But I'm not afraid to do that if we need to.
Yeah, I know as well. Our friends over at Church of the Highlands, they've begun to develop resources for helping develop your volunteers and sort of like the training curriculum, and they put it out there, on their website for other churches to use. I know here at Church Care, we're like, why reinvent the wheel if somebody else has already created resources that we can just straight up steal from? And so, I'd encourage all of our listeners, check out Highlands production page, and some of those resources are there. Those are, really killer, so that Tim, who, is already doing too much work anyways, doesn't have to create an onboarding system or program for their people. Tim,
Nice.
Something you guys did recently, I didn't get to see it yet because you still had your Meyer PI up, but did you get your new EAW system rocking?
We did. We got it in. It's been a few months.
So
it was a struggle to get in. But
tell our listeners, because, everybody just assumes every church does D&B, L-Acoustics, or Meyer, and we're all just shocked when somebody goes with something different.
Yeah, even I, gear illiterate, when you said EAW, I was like, the what?
The what? Which, ironically, EAW was like the system in every church in America 15 years ago.
Everything fades out, Toby. You should know that well.
Yeah, those KF 850s and 650s, they're everywhere. So, we're all Meyer, honestly. We were Meyer in our worship center. We're Meyer in every room, every venue on campus. And I actually, because I was part of the integration company, the company that installed everything, I installed the majority of the PA in this building. We had quotes from L-Acoustics, D&B, Meyer. One of the challenges in our space is it's a low ceiling and a super wide room. So sightlines are a problem. And just with a traditional line array, it was going to be an issue. And we had a few designs and they all worked, but maybe with a little bit of compromise. The EAW adaptive stuff, was much more compact. We were able to, and the way that the speakers rigged together, they almost butt up against each other. So like with traditional line arrays, you have a pretty decent gap, and there ends up being this pretty wide seam and between the two clusters, and things don't always sound great when you're kind of in that area. With this system, that seam is very small. And one of the things that we were attempting to do with this new PA was just make coverage as even as possible, so that everyone in the room could have as close to a similar experience as it could. And this PA does that fairly well. One of the cool things that I got to do after we installed the PA was, walk in the room, and I have some people that'll let me know, like, hey, kind of sounded weird over here, that kind of thing. And so I got smart out, ran the mics everywhere, and I noticed there's one spot, sure enough, was quite a bit darker than the rest of the room. And with that PA, I'm able to say, hey, from 63 feet to 82 feet, I want to affect the EQ in this way. And so I can EQ that section. And then sure enough, 2 weeks later, that guy was back sitting in the same spot. And he's like, I don't know what you did, but it sounds great. It has a lot of control, a lot more control than like a traditional cabinet. I wouldn't say it,
give us just the specs, as far as, what make, model, how many boxes, and how they're deployed.
Yeah. So each cluster, there's 3 outfill Anyas and 4 main Anyas. So you have 8, or you have 4 on each side that I'm staring at, and then 3 outfills on each side. 8 auto. Where is he? Is it 8? Good grief. It's not 8. It's actually 10 auto subs. And then we have 2 ANA front, like downfills, basically, that just kind of cover the center. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Newton, not GTO, outline Newton processing. And then they're all Dante cabinets, so you can control everything that way.
And have you regretted your decision at all?
No, it took me a while to get used to. The Meyer system we had in there was great. But there were definitely things that I was not hearing, and so the first Sunday, there are things that I have never heard in that room, frequencies I've just never heard in that room because the old PA just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It took some time to get used to, took some time to just kind of get my console file where it needed to be. The PA tends to get a little harsh if you're not careful. So kind of trying to tread that line. But no, I'm falling in love with it.
I think one of the faults of production loving people is they can go hear a system in another church and be like, that's amazing, I want that for our church, and it doesn't mean it's the right fit for your space. So kudos to you guys for making a decision that was right for your space.
No, totally. I mean, I would have loved to have a big old Meyer rig in there. I'm a big Meyer fan, or like some K3s or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was all about what was right for our space.
Yeah. Blake, would you do the Anya? Would you do the Panther? Would you do the K3 or the L3s? What would you do, Blake?
Well, Zach Brady sent me a D&B mug, so I would do a D&B. Also, Soundscape forever, man. Like, just rattle the old lady's bones.
Yeah, because you've heard the demo now, and Blake, you could never recreate the demo yourself. You'd have to have Mike Smith mixing for you.
Oh, well, totally. I also should never be in charge of buying these things because I'm just like, that was fun. Let's do it. Like, clearly, as you say, Tim did the hard decision to make the decision that was right for the congregation and not just what was the fun, shiny toy. I almost feel like we should have like a Tech of the Year award. And if so, I'd nominate him for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really good.
Well, Tim.
Well, come on, think about it. Like,
I know.
That's a selfless, tough decision for him.
Yeah.
Speaking of tough decisions.
It was pretty nerve-wracking too. I'll just be honest. Like, when you see everybody else making the opposite decision that you are, like, am I doing the right thing? But
well, and now you have to answer everyone's calls when future techs are in that situation. You're their guy to reach out to be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing EAW as well.
Yeah, and a fun opportunity. It's, there are not many of those systems out there at churches in America. You're the third church I've been to now that has one. But, just the fact that, if our listeners are thinking of that as an option, like now you have another church that you could reach out to and fly into Nashville and hear a demo and hang out with Tim.
It'll be tough to reach Tim, though. He has 2 email addresses.
Tim and Timmy.
Yes. So, T-Dog, tell me, what's the biggest issue you and your team need to solve in the next 6 to 12 months, other than what to call you? Is it people related? Is there a system that desperately needs upgraded that's not the speakers that we just put in?
Yeah. Both people related. Like I said, we're hiring a video director. Hopefully we get that figured out pretty soon. I'm ready for it. But I think one of the things that we've been working on now is just kind of a gear replacement schedule. I have a lot of gear outside of our worship center that is failing, and so just kind of, instead of being reactionary, trying to be proactive, knowing that some of this gear is only going to last so long. So, hey, in 1 to 3 years, I know that the student building, the PA at that point is probably 12 years old, maybe 13 years old. We need to look at replacement. Same thing with the audio console or the wireless in there. The lighting rig in our worship center is all probably 7 to 8 years old, and moving lights. They all have moving parts. They tend to fail a little faster than other gear. So that's what I'm working on right now. That's what I'm hoping to get to. There's a lot of conversation about building a new building because we're running out of space. So some of that replacement schedule might get on hold, and I'm still kind of waiting to see where all that goes. But yeah, that's the next year could be kind of crazy.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, one thing we always love to hear is a good disaster story. You already gave us one in the beginning about overwriting an artist's file, but do you have another moment where everything went wrong, or maybe everything almost went wrong, but you or somebody on your team saved the day?
Sure. I have a lot of disaster stories. I have too many. So a few years ago, it was probably 2021, we were coming out of this kind of crazy revival time at the church where I think we baptized 1,000 people in a course of a few months. We during that time we had all kinds of just weird little gear failures, nothing crazy, pastors might going out, which happened way too often. Anyway, we do this pre-service thing in our lobby, and it is fed via a live link over fiber, and it starts kind of dropping audio. We've had that problem before, like dirty fiber, and it normally it's just in the beginning of service, so when it's done, we can move on. About 30 seconds before the service started, the band gets on stage and they start saying, "Hey, is audio dropping out for everybody?" Roll right into service. We get probably a minute or two in, and it starts cutting out, losing everything. So cutting in and out, and then it drops completely. We lose everything, all monitors, broadcasts, front of house, all audio is dead.
Wow.
All the errors are popping up on the consoles. So I go run to our amp room, which is where all our stage racks are. We have a Route 66 that takes all of our fiber from a loop topology to a star topology. It's a hard word to say. So that you can shut consoles off and run consoles individually and things. But restarted all that, came back to front of house, nothing. We restarted the front of house console. We restarted all the consoles.
Yeah.
We're probably 10 to 12 minutes in. Meanwhile, the whole church is just worshiping as loud as they can. The worship leaders are continuing to lead in the worship. Honestly, the people that were in the room probably loved it, but I did not. Anyway, I'm standing there and I have the PA muted at this point because I don't want it to come on blasting and who knows what's going to come out when it happens. I'm looking at the console. We're on comm, trying to figure out what's going on. And I see everything go green. Everything's fine. And, so what happened? What's going on? And then it goes red again. And so it turns out that the broadcast console, he had restarted it. And while it was somewhere in that restart process, it was off and everything was functioning. So I yelled at him, "Hey, turn it off right now." He turned it off. Everything went green, unmuted the PA, faded it in, ended the last worship song and went straight to the message. So that was a lot.
Question for you, Mr. T. So are you saying then that you knew it was a problem, but they didn't know it was a problem? Did I understand that right?
No. It was a problem. There was no audio, period. You couldn't hear anything, but our worship leaders continued to sing and people engaged in it and had this worshipful experience while I'm sweating profusely trying to get the PA back up and running.
Yeah. So the whole problem was the broadcast console. That was the ghost in the machine.
Yes. There was a fiber issue. Apparently an SFP failed, which is a very rare thing to fail. Of course, we could not repeat that issue. Turned the console back on during the week, and everything is fine. And it took several weeks to kind of suss out what it was. And then once we replaced that SFP, we haven't had problems with that since.
Yeah, we find around here at Church Gear that when everything's burning down, hold on a minute, turn Blake off. Oh, okay, there it was.
They send me to Florida, to Fort Walton Beach.
Dude, the company is going to flourish while you're in Florida, Blake.
I hope y'all do, and I'll go Florida man. And okay, T-Wags, hit us with a tech takeaway. Something that every church production person would, benefit from hearing, maybe make their Sundays a little better.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned, like preparing for this podcast, just kind of made me think back about my career and how things have changed. I think one of the biggest things that helped me was finding people that I value their opinion on, that I can trust their opinion on, whether it's my mix or whether it's just anything technical related. That has been the biggest benefit for me. I've had people mix front of house for me, whether it was out of town or whatever, and I'd go back and I'd see what they did and try it, or see that kind of stuff. I think those are the things that has helped me the most. Sometimes you get stuck in a corner, you get yourself worked into doing something a certain way for so long that it takes having somebody else's hands and ears in your world to see maybe there's another way to do this. And not just production people. Like I have a few musician friends they'll tell me when my mix is not good. My wife will tell me, she's like, hey, the vocal was kind of hard to hear today. I'm like, oh, sorry, I got a little carried away. I think that's probably the best thing to help you improve.
Yeah, that's great. That's some Chwagon, advice right there.
I'm just trying to see how many nicknames we could give him in this one thing.
God.
All right, well, Mr. T, which that was my favorite. We really appreciate you coming on. Do you have anything you want to plug?
Not really. If you're a video director looking for a job, feel free to apply.
Yes.
But hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have somebody. So maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe be the second one then.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Wagoner. See, I'm running out of them now, Blake.
Just stick with TW. All right. See you, man.
There you go. See ya.
Hey, listeners. We're introducing a segment called Church Tech Confessionals. This is a time for any church tech to anonymously confess the worst thing they've ever done in church production. Here's one now.
One time, I ordered an SE-V7 off of Amazon, and as I was getting out of the box, I unzipped the pouch and dropped it straight on the floor. And then I returned it to Amazon and said it was already broken when I received it.
Hey, if you have your own 3 to 5 minute Church Tech Confessional, record it and send it to podcast@churchgear.com. And don't worry, we'll apply a voice changer and you'll be 100% anonymous. Your pastor will never know.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
So, Blake, Longhollow baptized like 1,000 people in just a couple months, and I was thinking of you as like a napping walrus in the surf, and it's basically like you're getting baptized over and over and over again as the surf is coming in.
I love this.
And so, because we've all heard the story of you having to get baptized twice because the first time didn't take, and I think this is just, God's attempt to try and fix you is baptize you over and over and over again, but is it ever going to happen?
The jury's still out on that, but we are now asking for the 120-something time, text this episode to a friend. In the same way that I keep getting baptized, and I will be by the time you're hearing this, we're keep asking you to text this episode, because if you don't, the podcast is going to get canceled and I'm going to get fired.
And if you want some actual photo evidence of Blake as a napping walrus on the beach, just text me.